What's one of the
Everything
instances
is
that
right.
really stick out in your mind about all those years on the farm?
Not getting a day off is what sticks in mind.
Yeah,
There must have been something.
you started at
Yeah.
5:30 in the morning. You did 2 hours work before breakfast. You did the chores like
The
that.
company of breakfast.
I'm working on a really important project. One of my most important projects to date, and I wanted to tell you about it.
The company of breakfast. You enjoyed that breakfast.
Then you had breakfast at like 7 o'clock, and after breakfast you went to clean the stalls for the cows, and the cows went into the pasture. You cleaned the barn, where the cow barn's called, where the trough is, the manure trough, and all this kind of thing. And then you went out in the field and started your regular day's work at 8:30 or 9 o'clock, and you were out there till 4:30. The chores were until 6 or 6:30. You ate supper, or dinner, or whatever you want to call it, at 7 or 6:30, 7 o'clock. Then after that, you went into the vegetable garden until it got dark.
Oh man.
What about
I'll
nothing?
tell you something, Joe.
The day.
There was no one on sleeping tablets. When you pulled yourself into that,
Exactly.
the pit, that was it.
And my grandfather refused to modernize and be involved with the tractor. He stuck with the horses.
Yeah.
He liked,
Yeah.
that's what he knew all his life.
I feel like in this homesteading world that we have this community here on the internet between YouTube, vlogs, blogs, we mean well. We're excited. We've seen what it's like to raise our own food and feed that to our family. And we bring that to you with this raw enthusiasm, trying to convince as many people as we can to do what we're doing because we know how great it can be. And that's great. But I feel like we come a lot of times with our stories and our limited experience with the raw enthusiasm of someone whose excitement has not been tempered by the years of experience, the kind of experience you get from farmers who have lived this life, perhaps their whole life, or at least a good portion of that.
As soon as you were productive,
Yeah.
as soon as you could do anything,
10,
you know,
10,
whether
10,
it was
11.
picking the chickens' eggs or what, you getting wood, picking up wood. That's when it started.
9, 10,
But for me, it's actively when I was 7 years old. I was the end of a spade. We had a kitchen garden of 3/4 of an acre. My father, my grandmother, myself.
Before that, he used to take.
And that is what you get when you talk to older farmers who generally are our grandparents' age or maybe great-grandparents. The kind of experience that you would get from an older farmer is not found online as much because the older farmers are not producing these videos. If you're like me, you probably have a grandfather or a great-grandfather or grandmother, great-grandmother who left the farm for one reason or another. And I wanted to get the story from my own grandfather who left the farm at 17 because joining the Navy was easier than a day on the farm. And I wanted to know why he decided to leave this life that me and Kay are so excited to get back to.
Well,
The
he's just
thing that bothered your grandfather the most was he couldn't stand the smell of the cows, and he said, then I joined the Navy, and my father had to sign the papers. He goes, I just couldn't stand the smell of the cows. So he ran away, and he was in the Navy for 4 years. Then there was an outbreak, and he learned that he had to do another year.
I feel like this project is really one of the most important projects I've worked on because it involves my grandfather's legacy. A lot of you know, I talked about it in a video a couple weeks ago, that my grandfather was very sick. And I was so glad I had the chance to do this interview with him when I did, because just last week he passed away. I heard it said recently that your legacy is as big, or it lasts as long, until the last time your name is spoken here on this earth. For some people that lasts a long time, but for most people it spans to their grandchildren or maybe their great-grandchildren, and then that legacy is gone. I thought maybe by sharing this story here on YouTube, I could extend my grandfather's legacy, sharing that story with thousands. And hopefully, the bigger reason I think this is an important project is because there are so many lessons to be learned by this generation. The older generation who left the farm, or maybe they are still farmers, but they haven't passed on their story and the lessons they've learned.
Everything, we raised everything you ate. We had the cellar, where they stored the meat and all this kind of barrels and wine, what they call the barrels, I can't remember now, so that long ago. But the barrels were full of pork and meat and the whole 9 yards. Wow. Smokehouse, we smoked everything. The hams, the sausages, the bacons, everything, the smokehouse, everything that you existed on was raised on that farm. The only thing you bought from the store was spices, and the rest of it was up from the farm itself.
And that's one of the reasons I feel this project is important, because I was fortunate enough to interview two men who grew up living the real homesteading life from dusk till dawn. My grandfathers. One of them you'll see in this series, my paternal grandfather, my dad's dad, and the other's my step-grandfather. Both were married to my grandmother, and they're all three of them are really good friends. That's a story for another time. But there's some really good lessons here, and I invite you to share what you've learned in the comments below. I will share my takeaways with you. And this eventually will be an entire podcast episode. You can listen to the whole interview once I'm done working on it. It may take a little bit longer than usual because I want to make sure I do both my grandfathers, the best story I can. I hope you enjoyed this series. Please share it with someone who you think it will inspire or who it might touch. And for those of you who have lost a grandparent, maybe you can enjoy listening to the stories from my grandparents and my grandfather, who's no longer with us, but whose story will hopefully forever affect people's lives. Nowadays, so a lot of our, I feel like a lot of the people that listen to our show and a lot of people that I interview that are my age and who are starting into, like, they want to do some little, like backyard style farm like we do. They kind of want to get back to the land. Yeah. A lot of times it's their grandparents who left, right? And I think one generation removed, so my dad didn't farm at all. He has no opinions on it, nor did my mom. We lose touch of that feeling of it's just hard work and that we were happy to leave and it's so much better now. And so many people glamorize the way it was. Yeah. I interview so many people who talk about, I just want to live life like my grandparents did.
Oh boy, it was not glamorous.
They're delusional. Often. Exactly. Getting delusional, or they've never done it. Right.